got some fresh evidence of media bias. Imagine that. And our competitor, CNBC. So here we go. A day before the chief Washington correspondent, John Harwood, was set to do an interview with Jeb Bush, John Harwood sent this email to Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, John Podesta. And let me read for you that email. He says, "What should I ask Jeb in speakeasy interview tomorrow?" Okay, so here he is asking John Podesta, Clinton's campaign manager, for questions to do an interview with Jeb Bush. And then, of course, a month later, Mr. Harwood moderated CNBC's widely panned Republican presidential debate. And we know from previous WikiLeaks emails, Harwood boasted to Podesta about his Trump questions, which, well, to the rest of the world, I mean, even the mainstream media here were shockingly biased and just bad. But here's the kicker, folks. John Harwood, who kind of seems like he's in bed with the Clinton campaign, is actually a major part of the network's election night coverage as chief Washington correspondent. Joining me right now for more analysis, Fox News contributors Deroy Murdock and Stephen Hayes. Good to see you guys.
Good to be here.
You're contributors, all right? In fact, I don't know if the camera can catch this, but you have a button right here, I guess it says lock her up.
Lock
so I know where you're coming from.
Yes, I have a point of view that I present here as clearly as I can.
But in this particular case, Stephen Hayes, John Harwood is the chief Washington correspondent, which means his obligation is to kind of be middle of the road, give the facts on both sides, and yet now we're learning he's, you know, basically an operative for the Clinton campaign. What's going on here? What does CNBC need to know about the role of chief Washington correspondent?
So I would say there's definitely a difference between chief correspondent and commentator, no question about it. I'm not convinced that we can conclude that John Harwood is as biased as this one email might suggest. What if, for instance, we had emails that were hacked, Russia hacked into Mike Murphy's emails, the campaign manager for Jeb Bush, and John Harwood had sent him emails
Have you seen the
and
other
said,
emails, though? I mean, the other emails, for example, you know, he's talking to John Podesta and is like basically trying to get a high five from Podesta because of his ridiculous questions at the debate, where he basically said, Donald Trump, aren't you just sort of running a Superman, a comic book version of a campaign? So there was a coziness there that I don't think is normal amongst someone who is trying to be down the middle.
Yeah, not very normal. And I also think it's interesting the response in the media and in the public about this. People are thinking, well, this is unusual. Tut tut. Imagine if we had an email from Brett Baer contacting the Trump campaign and saying, what questions should I ask Hillary Clinton tonight? Everything would stop. People would be screaming. It would be leading the news, front page everywhere, total chaos. And this happens. There's some concern,
right?
but not.
They try in the media, especially the left, tries to, because we do actually present both sides, and we try to make sure that we have all angles covered. And somehow just the fact that you're presenting the conservative angle on a story makes you, you know, a right-wing conservative.
That's right, yes.
I think we need more
There's a double standard.
I think we need more information to make the final judgment about what John Harwood did. I don't think it's necessarily improper just because he reached out and asked for questions. In my course of my reporting, called campaign strategists for other campaigns and said, hey, what do you think about this? Or if I'm going to talk to them, what would you ask? And I just think that's good reporting. But I agree entirely with Deroy on this question of a double standard. I mean, there's no doubt that if Brett Baer, if everything were reversed about this situation, you would have the chin strokers in the media, you know, furrowing their brows, scolding, tisk, tisk, Fox News, and you're not seeing that.
Well, there's a hypocrisy in general. I mean, I think about the Clinton campaign, the fact that she had Jay-Z on stage with her. Jay-Z, I mean, don't get me started. I've been on this thing all week because I'm just so horrified and disgusted by his language and the way he demeans women in a horrible, tragic way, considering how many young kids are listening to this music, and it's not setting any kind of standard for any kind of normal, civilized person. But anyway, she gets up on stage with Jay-Z, and nobody bats an eye. Like his language was terrible, by the way, when he was up on that stage.
Dropping F-bombs, N-bombs, et cetera, and she comes in right afterwards and high-fives the guy.
And,
amazing.
you know, I cannot even, and I keep saying, I cannot tell you what his lyrics are because they are that bad. They don't even make sense, but they're that bad, and they're that antagonistic and misogynistic towards women. And yet she's the women's candidate?
Yeah. Girl power, right?
I mean, again,
I guess there are
where's
limits
the
to it.
media on this one?
Yeah, huge double standard. If you look at the way that the media have criticized Donald Trump for some of his language, justified criticism in my view. They should be doing the same with Jay-Z, who's in his song lyrics with Hillary Clinton are just as bad.
And you'd think she would have said, okay, well, get up and sing a nice song. Don't get into that sort of thing. Keep it clean. And that didn't happen. Not even close.
So you go from Jay-Z to this news today about the maid. So she, according to the New York Post, basically wanted her aides to forward information, classified information, sensitive information, to her housekeeper at her Chappaqua house so it could get printed. I mean, I'm saying, like, who the heck forwards work emails to a housekeeper to begin with, right? I mean, that's just some weird, And then on top of that, this woman didn't have any clearance. This housekeeper was not supposed to see any of this information. So Hillary Clinton, who actually previously sent out a note to her staff saying, being very careful about what you send and to whom you send it, is sending it on to her maid?
It's amazing. There's a very interesting detail in this terrific story by Paul Sperry. I commend him for writing it. It says here, the FBI noted Clinton periodically received the Presidential Daily Brief, a top-secret document prepared by the CIA and other U.S. intelligence agencies. She received that and had her maid print the Presidential Daily Brief. Nothing gets any more secret than that. And to have somebody without security clearance getting this sort of thing, and she may be perfectly decent and honorable, all that, but who knows if she sees something and mentions it to passing it to somebody, or somebody's tapped her phone and is listening in, who knows what. This is gross negligence, and by that standard, Hillary Clinton should be convicted under the Espionage Act and begin serving time in a federal penitentiary, not be on the way to the Oval Office.
She's got all these excuses, like, with Qatar. We actually haven't heard from her on this one, but Qatar, giving the foundation $1 million, she never repeated that or actually told the State Department about that, despite having promised to do so if there were any big donations that came in. I mean, my goodness, it's like one after another, and like, at some point, you're running out of excuses, are you not, Stephen?
Yeah, I mean, look, all of these things tell us the same story. So it's just a total disregard for the rules and the laws that apply to other people, whether you're talking about repair work that they had done on their home, whether you're talking about the potential pay-to-play with the Clinton Foundation, and especially whether you're talking about her handling of classified and sensitive information. I mean, when the FBI 302s, these summaries of FBI interviews came out a couple weeks ago, there were interviews with diplomatic security agents who were horrified at what they said was Hillary Clinton's disregard for basic rules that others had to follow for years. And I remember calling one of them about how she takes her BlackBerry into this SCIF, which is this secure compartmental information facility where she gets her classified information. You're not allowed to take your BlackBerry into the SCIF. Nobody does this. It's rule number one. And all sorts of interesting information came out of those 302 interview summaries.
Right? I mean, wanting to make all these rules for everybody else. They can all live by it, but I don't have to. Why not? Unfortunately, I'm out of time. I'm going to leave it there.
She spent 6 years on the Senate Armed Services Committee. She should know better than this. 6 years on the Senate Armed Services Committee dealing with state secrets.
Thank you so much. Good to have you here, Deroy and Stephen. All right, I'm going to be back in 2.
Is your